What's going on, everyone? Welcome to my channel. I'm Bruno, and today I'm going to be talking about Kane Corns. Now, believe it or not, I'm actually a bit of a fan of Kane Corns, alright? Got his footy card up there. I mean, sure, you can chalk a few things that he's done as bad, but I do like that there's some form of Port Adelaide representation in the national footy media. For example, in this debate in April of 2021 about the prison bar jumper, while Eddie Maguire, the noted man baby, was as hard as ever to deal with, Kane Corns held strong, and pulling out the contract signed in 2007 on the topic was an absolute power move. The way it forced Eddie Maguire into admitting this...
When you signed it, you weren't aware that that was going to be happening. So
yes, I did.
How did you know that?
Because I knew it, because the AFL had
no one
told
else did. No one else knew.
Well,
that. You were the only club that knew.
It's called intelligence.
...was masterful. It was a difficult argument to have to navigate. And coming up against this...
I'm not asking for opinion, I'm giving you mine, okay?
I think Kane Corns held strong. I do think it's unfortunate that a lot of footy fans don't quite understand what Kane Corns' place in the media is. He's a sensationalist and an agitator. I've long theorised that sports media personalities don't fully agree with what they're saying. Are we expected to believe that Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp don't agree on a single topic? Same goes here. Are we sure that Kane Corns in 2020 believed that Connor Rozee was the best player of the 2018 draft? Just quietly, I don't even think he was the best Port player out of that draft. I think that was Zach Butters. But the point is, it's to spark debate and get conversation going. And this, for example.
The worst jumper in the AFL is this. And quite frankly, it is a copy of this magnificent prison bar jumper.
Is obviously a pure falsehood. You watch the full clip and it's for comedic effect. It's there to rile fans up. I do, however, have something that I think Kane Corns unfortunately fully believes, and despite what I've said about fans not understanding what he's there to do, it's ended up actually riling me up quite a bit. This clip from Footy Classified was uploaded on April 19th of this year to their YouTube channel. In it, what Kane Corns has to say about the Port fans and Ken Hinkley should really upset any Port fan who's watching this. It's a little bit old by this point, but given it was recorded and aired while Port were 0-5 and we've since actually won a game, I think what Kane has said he would definitely stand by, so I do think it's still relevant. So here it is.
Port Adelaide, who now for the first time in the club's history start at 0-5. You live and breathe the feeling of the fans in South Australia. Where are we at?
I think they've been incredibly disrespectful to the coach.
I'm already going to butt in because this alone demonstrates that Kane Corns does not in fact live and breathe the feeling of the fans, as Sam McClure put it. At 0-5, as such a proud football club, if alarm bells weren't already ringing, they should be well and truly as loud as ever. I myself have wanted Ken Hinkley gone since about 2018. Initially, I was already of the persuasion that sort of, how much of a factor can the coach really be? For me, the first major thing that really rang an alarm bell was going from 11-4 and 4th place in 2018 to slipping to 12-10 by the end of the season. That really had me concerned. For some, the point where they really lost faith in Ken was earlier, for some it was later. But using myself as an example, I've been ignored for 4 years, so my respect for the club and for Ken has disappeared the same way I think their respect for the fans has.
This is a coach that came in when the club was a mess.
On its knees.
An absolute mess. So Keith Thomas, Ken Hinkley, David Koch deserve respect.
Now here's a line that gets peddled by the Ken sympathetic media a lot. Let's just state some facts to start off. In 2011, Port Adelaide were a mess. Kane Corns would obviously be able to admit this. In round 20 of that year, a 138-point loss to Collingwood. The next week, 165-point loss to Hawthorn. Thus far, this is the lowest point the club has ever been in. We finished 16th, above Gold Coast in their first season, in 17th, only on percentage with a win in the final round against Melbourne. In 2012, Matthew Primus stepped down from his role after a round 19 loss to GWS in their first season too. We were 12th at that point and we ended up finishing in 14th, gaining only a draw for the rest of the season. Then for 2013, enter Ken Hinkley. That was Ken Hinkley's first season. 2022 will be his 10th season in charge. Just let that sink in for a sec. In that time that Ken Hinkley's been coach, 11 clubs have made grand finals and 5 have won premierships. But you know what the real kicker to that is? 2 of those clubs that won premierships and 1 that made a grand final finished below us in 2012. Obviously the premiers being Melbourne in 2021 and the Bulldogs in 2016 and GWS in their grand final, that was 2019. Sure, I mean, they weren't competitive and they gave our 2007 grand final loss record a fair shake, but that's still more than Ken Hinkley's achieved, so at least Leon Cameron can hang his hat on that. You know who the other club that finished below us that year was, that hasn't actually made a grand final? Gold Coast. They haven't even made finals. So that's precisely the point I'm trying to get at here. That's not a benchmark, because if that's the benchmark, you end up as Gold Coast when you could really be doing better. I'll try and dive into Gold Coast's situation in a future video, but for now this video is about Port Adelaide and Ken Hinkley. Ken Hinkley's a 10-year coach. Coaches that last that long are usually judged on premierships. In recent times, Alistair Clarkson has 4, Damien Hardwick has 3, Chris Scott and John Longmire have 1 each. You know who hasn't got premierships? Nathan Buckley doesn't. He still managed to make a grand final though. Maybe they should have won a premiership that year, but even the grand final alone is more than Ken Hinkley's achieved. And that leaves Ken alone with Brad Scott as the coaches who've lasted 10 years in recent times and haven't even made a single grand final. For a club with the motto, "We exist to win premierships," that's an incredibly low benchmark to set. Kane should know this. Quite frankly, it's offensive.
He has been a really good, strong coach, a great character, and has turned the footy club around basically single-handedly with some help.
So it wasn't single-handedly. Now, I am just being facetious, but there are 3 names that were mentioned there. Obviously Ken, David Koch, and Keith Thomas. Now Keith Thomas isn't at the club anymore, so that leaves just the 2 of them, David Koch and Ken Hinkley. But honestly, I think David Koch is almost a worse offender than Ken Hinkley in this situation. David Koch has the gall to blame Port Adelaide fans for being disappointed and upset with their club's performances. He's a businessman, but his indecision regarding Ken Hinkley has caused people to cancel memberships and stop attending games, things that are undeniably bad for the money metrics of the club. He has a book called Money Basics for Tough Times, but I've got, dare I say it, a basic tip that would help get the money right up at the club. And no, it's not the prison bars, it's just to sack Ken Hinkley. I realise it's not always that simple, but I mean, look, of the 3 Ks that were involved in the club that were mentioned, Keith Thomas is gone, which means Koch and Hinkley are left, and frankly, they should both be gone. Those 3 were great to get Port out of the position they were in 2012, but like I said, that shouldn't be a benchmark. And the point where Port goes from good to great has to happen sooner rather than later, I'd have thought. And by 10 years that still hasn't happened, not a single premiership has been delivered. You gotta go. Furthermore, the with some help part is important too. So when Ken Hinkley was appointed in October 2012, someone else was reappointed in the same month. And that was Darren Burgess, head of high performance. Now, when Port started under Hinkley, especially in 2013 and 14, those first 2 seasons that were a little bit more successful than some others that we've had, one thing that was noted about Port was their ability to outrun opponents, and they looked very fit, very fast, a lot of these factors. Now, obviously, Burgess and Hinkley came into the club at the same time, but the thing is, clearly Hinkley didn't, appoint Burgess. That happened beforehand, under Primus's watch even. So that factor that made Port Adelaide really exciting to watch in those years wasn't even the doing of Hinkley, and he wasn't even the one that put the wheels in motion for that to happen. And of course, when you're innovating at the professional level, you're bound to get overtaken. So by the time that Darren Burgess was gone in 2017, that ship had long sailed for that to be Port's strategic advantage. And after he did leave in the 2017 season, Port obviously lost that elimination final to West Coast after the siren. We were 5th place, they were 8th place. With 1 win over Geelong in that season, which we did lose in a close game, we could have finished 2nd. Meaning we're a better side than 5th that year, and we still lost to 8th place West Coast at home, in a side full of reanimated corpses, players that were about to retire or be delisted within that year or the next. That was a travesty in itself. And that almost led to one of Hinkley or Koch being gone, but look where we are now, 5 years later, and they're both still here. And after 2017, we were perfectly primed to have made finals and contended. But that just didn't happen. We had a great off-season after the 2017 season, I'll give it that. But, yeah, maybe the injury situation wasn't the best, but clearly that means Ken Hinkley's game plan had zero flexibility in it. After losing Paddy Ryder early in the season, to not replace him with Billy Frampton until round 23 when the season was just relying on a mathematical chance that we beat Essendon by enough and Gold Coast beat Geelong by enough? The season was well and truly gone by that point. Why wait that long? That falls squarely on the man in charge, Ken Hinkley. After 2018, Jared Schofield and Brent Montgomery came in. And look, we didn't perform amazingly in 2019, but come 2020, the midfield group looked amazing, thanks to Schofield especially. I'm going to focus on him in this portion. But Montgomery too was quite successful. I mean, he was involved with the Bulldogs in 2016, so they want to flag that year. Hinkley's tally of preliminary finals in his time at Port Adelaide is currently 3 of 9, and if he makes it to the end of the year, it'll be 3 of 10. Montgomery and Schofield on the flip side are currently sitting at 2 out of 3 seasons. It's no surprise to me at least that after Schofield left to be senior assistant at West Coast, we've had a sharp decline. For what it's worth, Schofield's very highly rated. In his time at Subiaco before becoming an assistant at Port Adelaide, he had 6 seasons, and the last 5 of those seasons were grand final appearances for 3 premierships. I know West Coast aren't looking too good right now, but that'd be a handy asset to have in your coach's box, particularly if you had a list that was good enough to contend, just like Port the past 2 years. Whatever argument you want to make about me perhaps cherry-picking things, time periods that count and don't count, whether successes are to go to other staff at the club and whether the failures are the blame of Ken Hinkley, don't bother, because I'm really only just stating things that have coincided with changes at Port Adelaide, so it just is what it is.
He's played off in the last 2 prelim finals. To think that you would sack him and show him that disrespect at the end of round 5, I get a little bit fired up about it, and I think you need to allow him time to turn this around.
And how did those preliminary finals go? A very small loss to eventual premiers Richmond at home in 2020, but given the COVID situation that we were largely unimpacted by that, particularly towards the end of the year, we should have won that. And in 2021, a record home preliminary final loss to the Bulldogs despite being heavily favoured going into that game. When you look at the context of those seasons, even though we made it to prelims, top 2 finishes on the ladder, I think we underachieved by that metric. A certain part of my perspective isn't just about wanting to sack Ken Hinkley. It's why after 2020, with a year to run on his contract, the powers that be decided that he should get a 2-year extension. Because as if that 1 year of contract security wasn't enough, let's make it 3. I understand if we had waited until the end of 2021, he would have been extended. Absolutely. Maybe only for a year though. Because obviously they're not going to sack a coach coming right off 2 preliminary final appearances. Kane even admits it in this video. But what's the need for the complacency? What's the need to just say, yep, let's give you this extra security based on no premierships? At that point, there's no qualification that he can deliver because he hasn't delivered a premiership. It's like he's allergic to success. Even at Geelong, lost grand finals. He came 3rd in the Brownlow one year. It's a solid effort, but close but not good enough. That seemed to have followed through to his coaching. The attitude the club has regarding Ken is just ridiculous, like he's some sort of protected species, and that's something that Kane is parroting in this video himself. The other thing that really gets me is how it's said that Ken needs more time to turn this around. How much more time can we possibly give him? He's been there, this is his 10th season right now. That's more time than he should have been afforded. Twice as long as he should have been afforded at this rate. Ken's achievements are nothing more than what Kane Corns described him as. Good. At his best years, I'd say even though they were preliminary finals, 2 of those were definitely underachieving. And his worst years, okay, sure, we never really bottomed out to being last place or bottom of the ladder, although we sure are giving that a good crack this year. But to me, when you couple those things, that's just a textbook definition of mediocrity. And is that really what we're going to stand for? Like I said, the club's motto is we exist to win premierships, not to accept mediocrity. Sure, the jump from near the bottom of the table to finals in his first year was good. But when is that step from good to great going to happen? When should that be expected to happen? I feel not long after jumping to good it should. But yet here we are 10 years after he's taken over. Hasn't really happened, has it? So when is the club going to realise that he's not the man to do it? I've noticed it. Plenty of other fans have. Even the happy clappers are starting to realise. But why hasn't the club? Allow him to try. Give me a spell.
So he believes they can still play finals, or he said that publicly. People have smashed him for that, but I don't actually blame him for saying that.
How could you smash him for... He's asked a direct question. What do you want him to say?
No, we're finished. I agree.
That's it. We're going to play our draft. It's over. We don't... Mike Williams did that one year, 2009, about after round 11 or 12, and the fans hated it.
Believe it or not, I do actually agree about the first part of this, but the problem is Ken Hinkley is no Mark Williams. He hasn't delivered a premiership to this club. He's right to be like, yeah, okay, I think we can still run for finals, because obviously this early in the season you're not going to say we're done. But regardless of whether he publicly or privately admits that, the truth is we are done for this year. In 2021, we ended the season with an embarrassing finals loss, eerily similar to 2007, although that was a grand final, not a preliminary final. It took a couple years to truly bottom out, but this year it seems like there's been a bit of a speed run to the bottom. If fans really don't like acknowledging that we're done, what's the alternative? Is it to reward the guy that's delivered nothing more than good? Are fans really going to hate admitting that maybe we should play the youth more than they hate watching the brand of football that is Hinkley ball? I don't really think so.
I just think if clubs are getting to a point where they don't see a future beyond this year, you've got the greatest coach of all time very rarely sitting on the sidelines waiting for an offer. I just think it's an odd thing in footy. We talk about how important every single week is. If you're thinking about playing the next 17 weeks, knowing he's not going to be coached beyond that.
I deliberately mentioned the Jack Ginnivan thing there at the start, because what's important to note about that is, ignoring the fans, there was still media pushback. Even in the episode of the Sunday Footy Show where he does mention his comments about Jack Ginnivan. But in this instance, there's no media pushback. What Sam McClure said there, and things to that essence, are about as far as they're willing to go. They're never calling for his head like they did with Buckley, or how they have been for Stuart Dew, for example. The only real pushback is coming from fans that do actually live and breathe Port Adelaide. Some buy memberships. I live in Melbourne, so it's not really feasible for me to do that. I don't really get to go to games either, but some do go to games. And I have an abundance of Port Adelaide merchandise. I'm wearing my beanie right now. So that's where my financial commitment to the club is. So to have a go at the supporters who are doing just that, supporting and holding the club up from the bottom, is just so disingenuous and insulting. The ship has long sailed for Koch and Hinkley to be in tune with what the fans want. So Kane Corns, just like you addressed your message to us fans, I'd like to use my platform as a fan and aspiring journalist to ask you this. How can you sit back and defend Ken Hinkley's underachieving? How can you say that the fans are being disrespectful when we've been nothing but disrespected by the club since 2017 and perhaps earlier? I love you, Kane, but unfortunately, this just wasn't right. Until then, see you later.